Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto. It is so good to be together. This is the community where we gather, our different paths entwined, to deepen our spiritual lives, nourishing connection, learning from each other, caring for each other, tending to our world. We have a chance to do all of those things just this morning. If you're here in person and you have questions about Unitarian Universalism or this congregation, stop by the welcome table with that blue tablecloth in the lobby and chat with our membership engagement coordinator, John Wright, before you go. You can also fill out a paper or online green sheet there, which is asking for more information about what's going on at UUCPA. And also, if this is the week you want to join the congregation, you can fill out a declaration of membership form right there and then. Online, I believe we do not have Anne, our usual engagement person, putting in all the links and everything, so bear with us. It's really great of Anne to do that every week, and for once she needed a week off. But Christy Iverson is there to greet you and answer questions, again, that you may have about the congregation and Unitarian Universalism. There's lots of stuff in your order of service about things coming up. I just want to particularly call your attention to what is happening in the fireside room and via Zoom not quite this afternoon, 11:45. Fireside room is right here. The link is in your online order of service if you're attending via Zoom, and that is our ongoing adult religious education program on hearing about my spiritual practice and the impact it has had on my life. That's not me, that's the two presenters who are here today, who are Weijia Cheng and Ed Hartle. And now, let us begin our service. If you have a chalice there at home, please light it along with us. These words come from Leslie Pohl Cosbow. Flame of fire, spark of the universe that warmed our ancestral hearth, agent of life and death, symbol of truth and freedom, we strive to understand ourselves and our earthly home.
With our centering words each week. Oh yeah, I forgot. With our centering words each week, we draw on the many sources of our living tradition. Today's words are from the great 19th century abolitionist Frederick Douglass. The limits of tyrants. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out what people will submit to, and you have found out the exact amount of injustice which will be imposed upon them. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. As we follow the sound of the bell into silence, we allow ourselves to arrive here fully.
I have a story to tell, so anybody who likes to come up and sit on the quilt and be closer to me when I'm telling this story, come on up. Oh, and Paul, I could use that handheld right now. Huh. Maybe I should just stick with this one then. So hi. I want to tell you this story. This is a true story that Reverend Kat shared with me when I said, hey, here's the things I'm thinking about today. Got any stories? And she said, well, this really happened, if you want to tell it to the cats. So I'm going to tell it to you a little differently than it came to me. I want to tell it from the point of view, starting from the point of view of a bird. An eagle, a bald eagle. Y'all know what a bald eagle looks like, right? Yeah, very famous birds. How did you know? Okay, so I don't really know what this bird called herself, if eagles have names for themselves, but we'll get to what the humans called her. What I know about her is that she was hungry. She was so hungry, and her beak hurt. It hurt so much. It had started hurting after this blast of very loud sound. Suddenly her beak hurt terribly, and it didn't work anymore. She couldn't open and shut her beak to tear into fish and little animals and things that she ate. So she went to a dump where the humans dumped all their food and other stuff, and she did her best with just the bottom half of her beak working to get food there, but it just wasn't enough. Eagles eat a lot, and she was so hungry. And then a human came along. Now, Of course, the eagle also probably did not know what the human called herself, but the human called herself Jane Fink Cantwell. And very luckily for this beautiful herding eagle, Jane Cantwell knew a lot about eagles and other raptors. In fact, she worked in a raptor center not so far from there. And she saw this eagle on the dump trying to get enough food. And as she got closer, she saw the eagle was really hurt. She had very little of the top part of her beak. Can we see the picture of what she looked like there? Yeah. And if you can look up Beauty, which is what Jane called her, and see lots of pictures from before, and you can just see that, like in a profile, she almost has no upper beak. She's kind of the left side of her upper beak. Now, for a bird, not having, especially a raptor, they use their talons to hold onto something, and then they use that very sharp upper beak to tear off chunks of their food that are small enough for them to eat. It's like a knife. So for her to try to eat was almost impossible without that upper beak. And then also she needed to be able to, pinch together. It's kind of like, how to eat with chopsticks, so you've got the two chopsticks, right? Now imagine that you only have one chopstick. Like you can't grab onto anything, right? You could just kind of spear. That's what she had to do, like kind of just scoop things up with her bottom beak. So you can see why this was such a problem for her. Also, she was in pain. Well, so even though she was a wild eagle, Beauty, and it was not easy to capture her, Jane took her back to her raptor center, and first of all, she got her an operation because I bet you can guess what the really loud noise and the blast was that hurt her beak. It was not a bomb, although it must have felt like it to her. She was shot by somebody who was a poacher or a hunter. You're not allowed to hunt eagles, but somebody did shoot her on purpose or by mistake. We don't know. So this bullet had shot off that part of her beak. So first thing is that Jane Cantwell got a vet to operate and take the bullet out. Okay, so the beak healed, but she still had this problem of not being able to eat. So the people at the Raptor Center were feeding her little morsels that she could swallow, but that was still not a really good solution. For one thing, she really wanted to be able to feed herself. And also, it was very hard for her to drink without her top beak also. And she couldn't preen. You know how they do, like cats? It's really important for eagles' health as well as their appearance to be able to preen their feathers. She couldn't do that because that's something else they use that top beak for. Well, so Jane Cantwell could not bear the thought that Beauty was just going to die and not be preened and not be able to eat enough. So she found a mechanical engineer named Nate Calvin. He worked for a company called Kinetic Engineering Group that mostly does things like cars and motorcycle engines and stuff. And we have a guess. I think these two know what happened.
So they made a mechanical beak for the top.
They did. You knew about that too, right? Because Stasha said, Beauty and the Beak to me. This story, people were calling it Beauty and the Beak because, can we see the next picture? They made a 3D printed beak for her. And in a very complicated operation, they attached it to what was left of her beak. And that gave her so much more ability to preen and to eat, even to slice her food herself. Now, Beauty can't go back. This was some years ago. She could not go back into the wild for a couple reasons. One, an eagle's beak has to be really, really tough, right? They are eating things that are still alive and struggling, and they were just afraid. The doctor and the engineer, Nate Calvin and Jane Cantwell, were all afraid this beak might not hold up against a struggling animal in the wild, and then she'd be in real trouble again. But also, she'd spent a lot of time with people, and you know what happens with wild animals when they spend a lot of time with people. They're not really able to go back into the wild anymore. So she is living in the Raptor Center for the rest of her life, but she can eat and she can preen. She doesn't have to be hand-fed, and it's all because these folks found a way to use human technology to really, really help. Now, this is actually not a day you're going to go to religious education. You're going to stay in the service. unless you want to go and play in the playground or something, you can always do that if you wish. But if you stay, later on in the sermon, I'm going to help us think a little bit more, and maybe you'll help me think a little bit more about what this means, that, what is the human connection to eagles and the eagle connection to humans, and where our technology fits into all of it, here for a late Earth Day service. All right? Thanks so much for joining me up here. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this story. We could have an Earth Day service every month. Absolutely. We had a book when Indigo was a kid, my daughter was a kid, called Earth Day is Every Day, and of course it is. So we celebrate it all the time. Thank you. Feel free to stay up here or to go back to your seats as we sing. We are going to sing I've Got Peace Like a River, which is number 100 in the gray hymnal. The words are on screen and in the order of service as well. If you have any joys or sorrows to share today, we would love to hear them, share them with you. Hope to bring you some comfort if you're suffering, and rejoice with you if there's something bringing you joy in your life. You can always share them. Quiet time to hold in our heart these joys, to let ourselves become aware of other joys and sorrows moving through our world, through the lives of people we know here and beyond here. And just let ourselves feel the borders of ourselves become porous enough for those joys and sorrows, that compassion and care to travel between us and others. Blessed be. Before we move into the theme of our service, with Jesse's reflection and a reading and so on, I want to invite you to do this. And if you are more comfortable in your imagination, if you have your eyes shut, you might close your eyes for this. Just get yourself comfortable. And now take a deep breath and then slowly let it out. Do that again. Do it one more time. And now this time, when you take a deep breath, hold your breath. Tell yourself over and over as you're holding your breath, I am separate from Gaia, the earth. I am separate from Gaia. Keep saying that. Feel your lungs tighten. Feel the need to draw in air. Feel the gentle nudge from your brain to inhale. Feel the growing panic of breath interrupted. And all the while, keep telling yourself, I am separate from Gaia. When you can no longer sustain that myth, inhale. Don't faint. In that breath, you have just drawn in about 25 sextillion molecules of air. The nitrogen, oxygen, water, vapor, and other gases that make up Gaia's thin blue membrane. The oxygen which sustains your body and is composed of the waste gases of countless phytoplankton, plants, trees, other producers. Oh, feel it replenish your body. And exhale the carbon dioxide that you produce as a byproduct of fueling your body and that feeds the world's plant life, all those things from the trees to the phytoplankton and all the plants everywhere. And recognize that none of us is at all separate from the living earth that we inhabit. Rather, you are completely interwoven into this complex system, dependent on it for your ability to survive and thrive. Let us now sing together, Earth Was Given as a Garden, number 207, in the gray hymnal. The words are on screen and in the online order of service. Please rise.
Hello. My name is Jesse. I'm a restaurant worker. The most interesting day of my life so far was 2 summers ago, June 7th, 2021. We drove to rural Minnesota with a small group of hippies that included our talented board member, Jerry Moran. Our small group met up with around 1,000 people. We were all intending to disrupt the construction of a new oil pipeline called Line 3 because it would trespass and pollute native lands, and it would greatly increase the rate of fossil fuel extraction from Canada. So much happened that day. We got arrested. A federal helicopter pelted us with debris from their rotors by performing a dangerous crowd control maneuver. The police used an experimental sound laser megaphone crowd control device on us. There was so much happening that day, but I like to say that nothing at all happened to us because we were what happened that day. We chose the time and location, and we decided to act. We took over that construction site and made it our own until we were removed by force. It might have been a mistake to get myself arrested. There's a database somewhere that says I have 2 misdemeanors, unlawful assembly and public nuisance, and I may come to regret that. We didn't even succeed in stopping that oil pipeline. The Enbridge Oil Company has a $70 billion market cap. From their perspective, all our activities amounted to a 72-hour delay at one of their pumping stations. But I learned something, and I tasted power that day. We have the perennial problem of corruption in the individuals who have been granted wealth and power in our society, and also the contemporary problem of backsliding democracies. Maybe there's an aspiring autocrat who is working to subvert the democratic process, or maybe some elderly dictator is maintaining his grip. It's important for them to make sure that tax-paying laborers like myself continue to be productive, regardless of how bad the corruption gets. So my compliance might be secured by threatening the loss of something I value, maybe loss of my money or my health or my clean record. I learned a way to preempt that threat. If I am already planning to sacrifice an asset in my plans to subvert someone more powerful than me, then when my adversary threatens to take it from me, it's much less intimidating. It's even rather convenient. The lesson I draw from this is not that I can gain some power by breaking the law, although I plead guilty to that charge. We planned ahead of time to risk arrest. We knew the risk, and we knew what we hoped to gain in exchange. So I didn't get arrested. I got myself arrested. I lost my spotless criminal record, but it wasn't taken from me. I chose to sacrifice it. We don't need to fear death nor the onset of chaos. They may bring joy or suffering, as can birth or the march of progress. I'll end with Confucius. The superior person, when resting in safety, does not forget that danger may come. When in a state of security, she does not forget the possibility of ruin. When all is orderly, she does not forget that disorder may come. Thus, her person is not endangered, and all her states and all their clans are preserved. So may it be.
Today's reading was written by Robin Wall Kimmerer in her book, Braiding Sweetgrass. I sat once in a graduate writing workshop on relationships to the land. The students all demonstrated a deep respect and affection for nature. They said that nature was the place where they experienced the greatest sense of belonging and well-being. They professed without reservation that they loved the earth. And then I asked them, "Do you think the earth loves you back?" No one was willing to answer that. It was as if I had brought a two-headed porcupine into the room. Unexpected, prickly. They backed slowly away. Here was a room full of writers, passionately wallowing in unrequited love of nature. So I made it hypothetical and asked, what do you suppose would happen if people believed this crazy notion that the earth loved them back? The floodgates opened. They all wanted to talk at once. We were suddenly off the deep end, heading for world peace and perfect harmony. One student summed it up, "You wouldn't harm what gives you love." Knowing that you love the earth changes you, activates you to defend and protect and celebrate. But when you feel that the earth loves you in return, that feeling transforms the relationship from a one-way street into a sacred bond.
I'm so grateful to be joined up here by a few of the many people working on the Green Sanctuary, which is our committee and our movement to continue to live as a congregation and as individuals in a way that is sustainable. I read that book a long time ago, several years ago, when it was fairly new. It bears rereading, as I've discovered over the last couple of weeks. But when I planned this service, it was on the basis not of that first reading, but on a kind of paraphrase of, I think, maybe that passage. But here is how it was paraphrased to me in something else I read. In Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass, she describes asking her class of freshman biology students what value humans have for the environment. And to her dismay, they couldn't name a single thing. We all hear and say things like, humans are garbage. The world would be better off without us. That may be somewhere else in the book. I'm not sure, but that's the idea that I was taking into this service, and not just because that maybe Kimmerer's freshman biology students said it or not, but that it really echoed something I have heard, read, even thought too many times. Look it up on the web. Would the earth be better off without the human species? You'll find a lot of debate, and you'll find a lot of people ruefully believing that maybe it would be. I mean, the planet will go on without us, of course. And the planet will go on with us. But we know enough about the history of this planet to know that rising out of the constant ebb and flow of species coming into being and disappearing into extinction that is just a natural part of this ecosystem, there have been 5 spikes of extinction in the history of the world, this planet. Since life came along, there have been 5 great extinctions, moments, millions of years perhaps, where a change in climate, the striking of an asteroid on the surface of the planet, some change brought about a wave of extinctions. And then, of course, the ecosystem regained its equilibrium and came back, but not before many, many species disappeared. We are in the middle of the 6th great extinction, and we know what has caused it. This is the Anthropocene extinction. It was caused by one species. It is being caused by one species, and the Earth has never seen anything like that. So the great extinction that we bring about, not mostly through shooting things, mostly through taking up so much habitat and changing so much about the ocean, the soil, the air, the landforms and patterns of migration, that other species simply can't change fast enough to keep up with what we are doing. Well, I lost the beginning of that sentence. But anyway, whatever happens out of that, whether humanity continues to exist, or, as I hope we do, or not, the Earth will go on. It will go on with plenty of living species, as it always does after great extinctions. I personally would like it to go on with tigers still here, and penguins, and tardigrades. Well, we probably can't wipe out tardigrades. Nothing can. It's a good thing. I really like them. And so you can understand that it's an existential question of humans who care about the Earth. A tragic question. Is the Earth better off without us? Is it us or the tigers and the polar bears? That's not a good feeling. Now, I take great heart, and I'm sure you all do, knowing I'm speaking to a room full, many rooms full of environmentalists. I take great heart in the people who are making a huge difference. People like Jesse and Jerry and all the thousands of people who gathered to try their best to stop that pipeline, to join the water protectors led by indigenous people who said not only our land but the planet is at risk if we keep transporting and burning fossil fuels. We have to do something different, and we're going to hold the line here. Those people make my heart feel a little bit better. And then there's the folks that I was telling you all about when you were up here, the kids were up here, Jane Cantwell and Nate Calvin, who worked really hard to restore the life of this one bird, and who work really hard, in the case of Cantwell, to restore the lives of raptors and make us all aware of how we should be helping raptors. Again, not by refraining from shooting them, although that would be a start, but by not putting poisons into the water and the soil that make their lives difficult, by protecting their habitat, by just taking up our share of the resources of this planet, and not so much more than our share. People like that, you can look up stories, and it's a good thing to do. The people right here at this congregation and all over who are turning things around, who are doing their best to defend this whole planet, to make the human race an asset, not garbage, not something that would make the biosphere as a whole say, sure wish we didn't have that species here. However, I can't help noticing when I look up those stories that the problems that these folks are fixing by seeking to block a pipeline, by engineering a new beak for a marvelous beast, those problems were caused by other humans in the vast majority of cases. Although, of course, we do have engineers doing amazing things to solve other problems presented by other parts of nature. It's hard not to notice that when it comes to the big things, like the pollution of the soil, like the acidification of the oceans, like climate change, it's humans pushing back against human-made problems. And there we are back in that existential crisis. Should we exist? Not us individually, we're nice people, but as a species. I don't think it's a good frame of mind to be in. I don't think it helps us. I don't think it's a good way to live, having this sneaking suspicion that you're not a very beneficial species. And I don't think it's a good frame of mind to be in when it comes to getting the energy to heal the earth. Despair might be motivating in short bursts, but it's really not sustaining. We need something else. So I was really glad when I started rereading Braiding Sweetgrass, which is, as I said, worth reading again and again and again. I was very glad to discover the passage that I thought that person must have been paraphrasing, the one that Barbara just shared with us, and discovered that, in fact, there was quite a different flavor to it. That she wasn't asking the students, do you think that, that we're worthwhile? Do you think that we have value? She was saying, do you think the earth loves you the way you love the earth? We all love the earth. As she says, no question in that group of people, and I know there's no question here too, that many of us would say exactly what they said. Nature, wilderness, is the place where we experience our greatest sense of belonging and well-being. We love this complex ecosystem to which we belong. But does it love us back? That is so much better a way to frame the question. And it's a hard question to even think about, to answer, but a really important one. Now, Robin Wall Kimmerer is a wonderful writer, a poetic writer, and a fine teacher. But she's also a scientist. She's a botanist, in particular an expert in mosses, one of the world's foremost experts in mosses. And she's an environmental scientist. This is what she does. So she's well aware of the problems that we might get into if we anthropomorphize nature, the planet itself, as we do with the saying, the image Gaia. And yet, she wants us to really think about this. So she gives us a way that a scientist could wrap their mind around this idea. Does the earth love us? And I think the way she does this is by shifting us away from thinking of love as a feeling and looking more at love as actions. She says, recognizing that this is a hard thing for scientists to grasp, where's the evidence? What are the key elements for detecting loving behavior? She says that's easy. No one would doubt that I love my children, and even a quantitative social psychologist would find no fault with my list of loving behaviors. Dr. Kimmerer says, nurturing health and well-being, protection from harm, encouraging individual growth and development, desire to be together, generous sharing of resources, and on, sacrifice by one for the other, interdependence. This is how we know that one being loves another without being able to read the being's mind or know whether they think and feel the way we do. We can tell. That's all the things you do for your children? Looks like you love them. Well, she says, does the earth love us? Does it nurture our health and well-being? Does it protect us from harm? Does it share its resources with us generously? I'm going to come back around to Kimmerer's idea of how to help ourselves see the earth as doing just that if we're not quite convinced. But first, I want to look a little bit more at some of the things that present our dilemma, our human dilemma. What is it about our species? Because lots of species come and go, and they make things difficult for some other species and beneficial for other species. And, you know, of course, we have a role in our ecosystem. We are eaten and eat things. We exhale things that some of creation needs and inhale things that they produce. But our particular talent that makes us have, I would say, such an outsized effect on our environment, considering our numbers, is, well, our ability to think ahead, if imperfectly, to reason, also imperfectly, to build things that last way beyond us. In other words, our technology. It's not useful to just bemoan that. It's who we are. We're not going to be able to forget that we can build, that we can make plastic and roads, that we can make shelters that live longer than any individual one of us, that we can make tunnels for toads to get through in order to escape the cars that we also make, that we can make amazing things that will scoop up the tiny, tiny plastics after we discover that they have spread far beyond our control. As our hymn said, earth was given as a garden. In the garden, if you want to follow the Eden image, tree of life was planted there and the tree of knowledge. We reap the tree of knowledge. It's what we do. And we're not going to stop. We can't forget what we know. But lest we think that that dooms us to be the doom of other creatures, we could look at the ways that human beings use technology. I don't have time to go into a long explication of Balinese water temples, but I urge you to look them up, to look up the presentations of Stephen Lansing, whom I first discovered through the Long Now Foundation, the organization here in the Bay Area that is dedicated to thinking long term, saying, you know, this is something we don't do so well as humans. Let's think long term. And Lansing, who's an anthropologist, says, you know, the people in Bali have been doing this for a very long time. They have a very complex irrigation system, and irrigation really lends itself to selfishness and greed taking over. As I said, I can't go into all the details, but suffice it to say, the people of Bali have not eradicated selfishness and greed. They can be selfish, they can be greedy, but they have created a complex system of irrigation in which the people upstream have just as much reason to protect the water and pass it along good to use to the people in the rice paddies downstream as the people downstream do. Usually that's not the case, right? The people downstream suffer from what happens upstream, but the people upstream, they don't care. The people of Bali have solved this problem. They solved it over 1,000 years ago, and they have sustained the system all that time. They know how. They're no different than people anywhere else. Lansing has some other reasons to be hopeful that we could adopt systems like this elsewhere in the world. I'll just say one other thing that gives me hope is, well, Kimmerer and her people. Because not only is she a botanist and a scientist and a professor, she is a Potawatomi, member of that nation, and she learns from indigenous wisdom and passes on indigenous wisdom that she incorporates into her science and her writing. Again, human people who have known and practiced for a very long time how to live sustainably. It's not that they don't build houses, it's not that they don't take up any room, it's not that they don't leave trash behind or bury their dead and need space among the other creatures. But they have ways of keeping a balance. And they have done it for over 10,000 years. Human beings know how to do this. And again, a problem, I think, sometimes with modern environmentalism, not only is that we can get stuck in despair and self-hatred, but those of us who are not indigenous can get this sort of woo-woo attitude towards those who are and say, oh, they are an enlightened kind of being. Well, they're very wise societies, but again, they are not free of greed and selfishness and the things that can create environmental disaster if we let them run rampant. What they have is very old, tested, honored institutions for counteracting those things. They have the social technology to be wise about our other technologies, just like the people in Bali, who know all about irrigation and could use it so that the upstream people can get all the good water and leave the people downstream with nothing much for their rice paddies. But they have figured out a way to overcome that and many natural pests that assail rice farmers as well. So I'd like to return to this question of love. If we remind ourselves not only that we love the earth, and not only that we love other human beings, but that the earth loves us, all of us, the way a mother loves her children, sustaining them, giving them what they need, sharing her resources with them so that they might thrive. If we can remember that, then we know to look to the people who figured out how to live in such a way that we love one another and the earth for the long haul, for thousands and thousands of years. We know how to do this, we human beings. We've got the proof in many, many places. Not just among the Potawatomi and Bali, but in many human cultures, including right here at UUCPA. How do we remember that? Well, we already know that just telling people about environmental problems is not enough to motivate them to live in balance, to live as a blessing upon this earth. It's not. And definitely beating ourselves up and feeling like maybe we should just disappear as a species, that would be best. That doesn't seem to be very motivating either. What Kimmerer says, if you're having trouble remembering that the earth loves you, she says, plant a garden. When you plant a garden, you know every day, this is my mother giving something back to me. I have given this patch of land something it needs, and look, it is giving me blueberries. Is that not an exchange that, if it were between human beings, would look like love? I take care of this patch of land, and it produces flowers that give me joy. So maybe what we need is not just to go out into nature and take in its beauties, as her graduate students did. They said, I know that. I'm at peace there. That's good. That's good. But we need to not just do that. And we certainly need not to go into the wilderness and think, oh, this place would be perfect if it were not for us, for me and my kind. But to go into a relationship with the earth in which we are caring for a piece of the earth, and a piece of the earth is caring for us in return. I would love to see what kind of human beings and what kind of harvest of nature we would reap if we knew just how much the earth loves this species. Let's see if we can discover that together.
We create this space together, not out of wood or glass, nor even out of electricity and binary signals, but out of our presence. Wherever we are today, we have chosen to be together, hoping that together we can do much more to make our lives into all that we dream of and make our world into the one we hope to see. If we are moved by gratitude to each other, we can choose to support with whatever financial resources we can, the community that we are creating and that is creating us. As a part of a free church tradition, we accept no money from any governmental body, nor do we receive money from any ecclesiastical authority, in order that we shall remain free to govern ourselves. You can use cash or check or the QR code or text info to the order of service. The offering will now be given and received.
Thank you all. Peter Meyer, who's a UU composer, took that old tune that we sang, that beautiful old tune to Earth Was Given as a Garden, and again, took a human creation, a talent, and said, let's see if we can change it just a little, see what it could become. And so we're going to sing Blue Boat Home, which you will notice is very similar to that beautiful old tune by Roland Hugh Pritchard, but takes it in a direction for our time. Please rise in body or spirit. The words are on screen and in the online order of service, as well as number 1064 in the teal hymnal.
Sailing
Thank you, Yuri. Now, if you are online, please unmute yourself and turn on your video if it isn't on already. You can touch hands in that kind of virtual way we do, touch the sides of your box. And here in the main hall, you can touch hands, or if you're more comfortable just expressing your presence by folding your hands across your chest, you can do that too. Let's say our benediction. Go out into the